It's finally happening. Diddy has been arrested, and in a moment that feels like the culmination of years of whispers and rumors, justice might finally be served. For so long, it seemed like P. Diddy, once a revered mogul in the music industry, was untouchable, despite a mountain of allegations and heinous acts attributed to him. The man, known for his charisma and flashy lifestyle, has long been surrounded by stories of violence, manipulation, and unthinkable crimes. Things that weren't just rumors whispered among industry insiders, but dark tales that haunted those brave enough to come forward. From car bombs to brutal assaults and deeply disturbing sex crimes, the list of accusations has always been chilling. It felt like P. Diddy was collecting offenses as though they were trophies, as if he were on some twisted mission to rack up as many crimes as possible, like some criminal version of Pokemon. His actions seemed almost too horrifying to be true, leaving the public wondering how someone so embedded in the industry's upper echelons could have gotten away with such atrocities for decades. The music industry, with its glamorous sheen, has long been tarnished by the darker underbelly that people like P. Diddy helped cultivate. While his parties were legendary for their opulence, they were also infamous for the sinister activities that took place behind closed doors. For years, stories of lives destroyed in the wake of his debauchery circulated. Those who dared to speak out were met with either disbelief or a suffocating silence, crushed beneath his power and influence. But in recent times, it has become harder and harder to ignore the growing mountain of evidence against him. What was once whispered about behind closed doors was now out in the open, and the weight of decades of abuse, manipulation, and violence was finally catching up to him. Investigations into his activities had been quietly simmering for years, and now, in what feels like a climactic and long-awaited moment, P. Diddy has been arrested. When the story first broke, the indictment was sealed, adding an air of mystery and anticipation. But now, the gates have been thrown open for the world to see, and the charges laid out against him are nothing short of horrific. P. Diddy has been charged with sex trafficking by force, transporting individuals to engage in prostitution, and racketeering conspiracy, among other crimes. The indictment alleges that he ran an enterprise engaged in sex trafficking, forced labor, and kidnapping, among other vile acts. From 2008 to the present, he is accused of abusing, threatening, and coercing women and others around him to fulfill his sexual desires, protect his reputation, and conceal his egregious conduct. These charges reflect the long-standing allegations that have swirled around him for years, claims that many believed were too serious to be true, but are now, finally, being validated. But as dark and twisted as these revelations are, they represent only a fraction of what has been whispered about P. Diddy over the years. The civil complaints filed against him since 2023, 11 in total, are just the tip of the iceberg. The deeper you dig into the P. Diddy lore, the more depraved and monstrous his actions appear. He has been described not merely as a criminal, but as a force of destruction, ruining lives, manipulating those around him, and orchestrating events so twisted they seem almost too outlandish to believe. One particularly horrifying detail that surfaced during the investigation was the raid of his home, where law enforcement reportedly seized thousands of bottles of lube and baby oil, a stockpile that paints a disturbing picture of the excesses and horrors that took place behind the scenes. These items, along with the mountains of narcotics that were found, everything from cocaine to MDMA, ketamine, oxy, and Xanax, were part of his so-called freak-off parties. These gatherings weren't just debauched, they were the stuff of nightmares, with P. Diddy allegedly forcing attendees to engage in non-consensual sex acts, often while pumped full of drugs, as he watched from the sidelines, indulging in his sick pleasures. The imagery alone is harrowing. P. Diddy, allegedly like some frenzied, drug-fueled goblin, watching these acts unfold, detached from reality, consumed by power, and his insatiable lust. The comparison to a twisted version of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, where the candy is replaced with drugs and the factory with a den of horrors, feels disturbingly apt. The amount of freaky, unimaginable things found in his home seemed to open a portal into a separate dimension, one where human decency and morality had long since ceased to exist. And yet, despite all of this damning evidence, the drugs, the lurid supplies, the eyewitness testimonies, his legal team remains bizarrely optimistic. They released a statement expressing disappointment in the prosecution's decision, calling it unjust. Their defense is almost laughable in its audacity. The statement tries to paint P. Diddy as a misunderstood music icon, a self-made entrepreneur, a loving family man, and a proven philanthropist. They acknowledge that he is imperfect, but argue that he is not a criminal, claiming that he has cooperated fully with the investigation and voluntarily relocated to New York in anticipation of these charges. They plead with the public to reserve judgment until all the facts come to light. But the problem is, the facts are already out there, and they paint a horrifying picture of a man who has terrorized countless people for decades. There is video evidence, countless testimonies, and a wealth of information that supports every damning allegation made against him. His legal team can argue all they want, but it's clear that this time, the walls are closing in on P. Diddy.